just to recap, because I can't remember the woman's name, but essentially she figured out um, that there were stars closer and further away, or how to measure that. What was
Well,
that
yeah.
called?
Well, her name is Henrietta Leavitt,
Yeah.
Leavitt, and the things that she studied were called Cepheid variables, Cepheid variables. And so, while her story is very interesting in terms of the origin,
Yeah.
it's just what it really is it was the way we figured out how far away things are. Because when you think about it, you go outside, you're out in the countryside, you look at the star. Some stars look brighter, some stars look dimmer, but you don't
Yeah.
know if they are farther away or if they're
So
just brighter because they're brighter.
yeah, one thing I wanted to ask about that. So was the assumption that they all had similar kind of energy as stars then?
In the old days,
Yeah.
they didn't know. It was just there was no information of were they close or were they far away.
Okay.
Um, and certainly in the very, very beginning, it was sort of reasonable to assume that all stars were on average basically the same, which of course they're
Okay.
not, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the old days, you talk, 300 years ago, they had no clue, so they just kind of assumed they were the same, but of
Yeah. Okay.
course they
Okay.
weren't. I mean,
Okay.
it took us hundreds of years to figure this out. It wasn't a quick thing.
Yeah. No, no doubt, no doubt. Okay, and then so it was her, it was Hubble that took her ideas with who was the next guy? Sorry.
Guy's name is Vesto Slipher. Dumbest name. Slipher. First name Vesto. And so what he did is he just figured out that things were moving towards us and things were moving away from us.
Okay.
And
Okay.
before him, nobody really knew that. They thought maybe they were stationary. If you remember in the way back days, when the Catholic Church ran the world, you had these crystalline spheres that were permanent and unchanging and perfect, because the stars just didn't move and didn't change, and that was that.
Yeah.
So it was only about, a little over 100 years ago that we realized just how dynamic
And
the
and so I guess that came with the innovation of the telescope then.
Well, that particular thing, there's a Mount Wilson telescope in California, and
Yeah.
it was the Hubble telescope of its time.
Okay.
And before that, they had telescopes. I mean, telescopes started with Galileo and
Galileo.
guys
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But those were little dinky telescopes. But these were the telescopes where you could actually start to look at the Andromeda galaxy and start seeing stars in another galaxy.
I
So,
see.
anyways, Mount Wilson was the telescope, and it
Cool.
was I don't know. It turned on in the 1920s, and it changed everything in the same way that the Hubble telescope
Of
changed
course.
everything when it turned on.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Okay. So jump that. We got to there, and then essentially we were talking about the heat thing. Was there a specific person that knew that figured out the heat stuff, or is that just using
But
chemistry and
yeah, that's
knowledge of that kind of stuff?
that's sort of generically obvious that if you compress
Yeah.
something, it heats up. So there wasn't
Okay.
a single person.
Yeah. And so how then? Because so I think I missed something. How then did it turn it into heat? Was it that because they had more energy, we assume that they had more heat energy?
No, but it's like in chemistry. If you have um, I don't know, some flask full of air,
Yeah.
and then you just squish the air and make it smaller so that it goes from being this big to this big, and you put a
Yeah.
thermometer in, it just warms up.
Okay, but I mean, how have we connected the distance thing to the
Well,
so you know
there's a certain
y-
temperature that the world is now, but as
yep.
things get closer and closer, I mean, and I'm not talking about like, you know, um, you know, two stars now, if they're this far apart, and you move them closer, they don't get hotter. But once they
Yeah.
start touching and you start compressing them, they do get
Okay,
hard.
cool. I see what you mean. Okay, so okay.